great nation of ours to the best of my ability through the changing times ahead. The Queen takes an intense interest in every aspect of life in our country.
Who else has defined her lifetime of service to the throne and her lifetime of service to God?
And listen to the radio, and then her day would start and her private secretary would bring her
Miller, Queen Consort, but her time with the royal family came to an end in November 2022.
I'm currently reading Angela Kelly's most recent book, which is The Other Side of the Coin.
Dressmaker to the late Queen Elizabeth II has been caught in an emotional whirlwind.
Did the late Queen's dresser, Angela Kelly, a new home in honor of a promise made by his mother.
Has announced the death of Queen Elizabeth II, the longest reigning monarch in British history.
It was an extraordinary outpouring of grief amongst people that used to work for the Queen. Walking behind her coffin was very, very moving.
Who would become our Queen, dedicated her life to the service of her people and the Commonwealth.
Princess Elizabeth received the news of the death of her father. She went into shock.
Still grieving her late father, King George VI, it was now up to her to gain the trust of her people. Embarked with Prince Philip on a 7-month world tour, making her the first reigning monarch to visit Australia and New Zealand.
It reads, "The Queen died peacefully at Balmoral this afternoon."
Day 47. But love her or hate her, the king has made it clear that he didn't want to see her homeless.
Struggles. Angela Kelly has been a pillar of strength and unwavering support for the late Queen.
Every morning for almost 30 years, Buckingham Palace had a routine nobody outside the household ever saw. A radio, a song, and the Queen of England, moving side to side, singing along. That's not speculation. It's Angela Kelly's own account given directly to Vanity Fair. Kelly was the Queen's dresser from 1994 until her death in 2022, and she says every single morning, without fail, the Queen would listen to the Terry Wogan show on Radio 2. When ABBA's Dancing Queen came on, she loved it. Subscribe to Royal Archives for more moments the palace never planned to make public. The relationship behind this story didn't start in a palace at all. Kelly met the then princess in 1992 in Germany, working as a housekeeper for British Ambassador Sir Christopher Mallaby, whose household the Queen and Prince Philip visited that year. The two got along immediately. Kelly says the Queen personally invited her to apply for a position as assistant dresser at Buckingham Palace. She took it. And by 2002, Kelly had risen to senior dresser and personal assistant, a role she'd hold for the next 20 years. Somewhere in that climb, mornings became a shared ritual. Not fittings, not appointments, just a radio, switched on, the same station, every single day, whatever else was on the schedule. By the time she'd become senior dresser, Kelly says the two of them had settled into an easy, informal shorthand, describing themselves as two typical women, swapping opinions on clothes, makeup, and jewelry in between the actual wardrobe work. It's a detail Kelly only chose to share now, ahead of what would have been the Queen's 100th birthday on April 21st. Here's where the story stops being sweet and starts being specific. Kelly told Vanity Fair that when Dancing Queen played, both of us would dance, not stood, not smiled. Danced. The Queen, she says, would move from side to side and sing along, and according to Kelly, she genuinely had a good voice. Kelly's own contribution was less composed. She admits she'd get carried away, dancing around the monarch like I was at a disco. At which point, Kelly says the Queen would tell her to move over, because Kelly, by her own admission, could not sing. They laughed about it, every time, for years. This isn't a single anecdote pulled from one interview and stretched. Kelly frames it as routine, a fixed point in the day, repeated for the better part of 3 decades, inside a household built almost entirely around schedule and formality, protocol officers, and a diary planned months in advance. A pop song from 1976 played on daytime radio, cutting straight through all of it, every morning, without an audience, without a camera, without a single courtier or private secretary in the room to see it, without anyone outside that room ever knowing it happened until now. What makes this land is what it says about the version of the Queen almost nobody got to see. In public, she was reserved. Famously so, deliberately so, for 70 years on a global stage where a raised eyebrow made headlines. Kelly's account describes someone else entirely behind closed doors, relaxed, playful, willing to be teased about her own dance moves by the woman helping her get dressed every morning. It's the same private register Kelly has described elsewhere in the same conversation. The Queen washing dishes at Balmoral, even while entertaining a sitting prime minister, taking her great-grandchildren out riding and walking, choosing fluffy chicks and chocolate eggs for her own Easter decorating. Kelly calls her plainly a cool granny. That same relaxed side showed up in the fitting room too. Kelly says the Queen loved watching her clothes get made from the start, favored pastel and deep colors, and once encouraged Kelly to raise her hemlines because, in Kelly's words, you have good legs. She preferred people focus on her speeches, not her clothes, Kelly adds, but it's the same private streak the Dancing Queen mornings show. A woman who let her guard down completely with exactly one person in the room. One imagines, if she were still here for what would have been her 100th birthday this year, that radio would still be on somewhere in Windsor. And Dancing Queen would still get the same reaction it always did. That's not a claim about what she's doing now. It's just hard not to picture, once you know the routine ran for 30 straight years without missing a beat. What actually seals this story is the contrast between the two women standing in that room. One had acceded to the throne at 25, worn the crown through jubilees, decades of state visits, and finally, a pandemic. The single most recognized head of state on the planet, watched by billions on her worst and best days alike. The other was a housekeeper from Liverpool who talked her way into a dressing job because a diplomat's household liked her work. And for a few minutes most mornings, none of the titles, protocols, or 70 years of duty mattered at all. Kelly wasn't managing a monarch in that moment. She was dancing badly next to her boss, getting told to move over, laughing about who couldn't sing. That gap, between the formality the entire world saw and the ordinary morning almost nobody did, is the whole story. It's why Kelly, closing out that same Vanity Fair conversation, called the Queen simply her best friend. Not Her Majesty, not the monarch I served for 28 years. A friend she danced with most mornings, and has grieved every day since September 8th, 2022. In 2024, Kelly revealed the rest of that ending, that she told the Queen, "I love you," and kissed her goodbye in her final moments at Balmoral, then dressed her for the last journey home to Windsor. The same closeness that let two women dance badly to ABBA before breakfast is the closeness that put Kelly in that room at the very end. So here's the verdict. This wasn't a rumor, and it wasn't palace spin. It's a first-hand account from the one person who stood closer to the Queen's daily life than almost anyone alive. Told on the record, timed deliberately to what would have been her 100th birthday. It confirms something the public image never allowed for. 70 years of duty on the outside, and a woman who still needed a few minutes of ABBA most mornings to feel like herself on the inside. Angela Kelly has more of these stories from the same conversation. The Easter chocolate eggs, a raised hemline because you have good legs, the final goodbye she gave the Queen, in her last moments at Balmoral. Each one chips away a little more at the idea that the Queen was only ever the crown, and never just a woman who liked a song on the radio. What's still unresolved is how many more of these mornings exist that the public still hasn't heard about, and whether Kelly or anyone else who ever stood that close chooses to tell them. Subscribe to Royal Archives because the next one might be the story that changes how you see her completely.